Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CEDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Matt, aka Null.
Yo, yo.
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
How you doing?
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
What's up, everybody?
And in this episode, we'll be talking about CEDH staples. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to since the last time?
Well, started playing this game called Factorio, and I'm quite thoroughly addicted now.
It begins.
It begins, yeah. Mega base status coming in.
Are you do anything in STEM? Yeah, this game, literal crack.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It scratches itches that you didn't even know that you had in like deep recesses of your brain.
I mean, I've played enough modded Minecraft to know that I had those itches, but...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if base Minecraft hits it quite like this.
But modded Minecraft, definitely very similar. So if you've ever played modded Minecraft, you know, like... And somehow Factorio is even worse for being addictive because it's like modded Minecraft, except they took out all the really annoying parts of modded Minecraft and just made it really easy to do the stuff that you want to do instead.
Yeah. Bots and like all that stuff, it's wild. I watched a lot of or got like a couple months ago I got into watching Factorio like speedrun, like the world record guy do his runs. Dude, that shit is wild, man.
Yeah, I have to look at that.
Yeah, no, it's wild. Like it's something else. Because it's there's obviously a lot of like, you know, there's some like APM and stuff, but it is really about like, you know, maximum efficiency and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a reasonable amount of variance in like your start. So unless you're like practicing one seed, then
I also like watching the Hell World kind of playthroughs, where it's like you really have to focus on like military very early and stuff.
Dude, that's the part that I like want to avoid. I would happily play a game with like no invading monsters.
Myself, haven't been doing too much. Did some CDH brewing. I went back to a Commander night at the LGS, and first time, you know, in a minute. In fact, it's the first time in a minute that I've actually played Commander. I've been on a bit of a Commander hiatus, jamming Master Duel and stuff, and then away from my setup, but now I'm back to my setup, so I'm gonna be jamming some games again. And then I guess probably this weekend, you know, as in preparation for Marchesa, we'll play some Playmax tournament and you know, shake the rust off, hopefully. So that'll be nice.
I think. Yeah, I guess I guess we will know the result of that tournament by the time that we get this episode out. So,
Unless you're
if
feeling
listening
very
now,
ambitious.
Go point and laugh at the three of us who scrubbed, or whoever of the three of us scrubbed out, and then give a round of applause to whoever didn't. We have yet to see if that will be any of us, but you know,
I'm optimistic. At least one of us will like.
Are you guys tryharding?
We'll
Are
take
you guys
it.
taking like good decks?
I am taking stuff to get a feel for what stuff looks like in the current meta.
I
So yeah, you're tryharding.
Oh, I guess actually since the episode will come out by the time that we're done with that. Yeah, I'm thinking of just bringing Cody one more time, because I tested with it a bit in just like personal play testing with Morgan, Turnip people, and then random people around, and it wasn't doing too hot there. And I think I'm not sure that it's gonna do that well, but I want to get like a definitive, like, this is how it's working currently in tournament settings.
It surprises me to hear that, to be honest.
What, that it wasn't doing particularly well?
Yeah.
I think it's too easy to like quote unquote spite, and I don't mean like not emotionally spite, but like effectively spite. You're not intending to like, oh, I'm going to stop the Cody player specifically from winning, but it's a deck that like basically has a demand that's like, if you want to stop this player from winning, take like these 3 steps, and like people just will take those steps. Like it's too telegraphed.
Yeah.
And someone's gonna sit down and just be like, I'm just holding interaction until profane tutors in the graveyard. And like there's not you just don't have any recourse if that happens.
I'm thinking about taking Yasan, so yeah, don't hold your breath for me to do.
Hey, dude, you never know. You gotta represent Yasan, man. I feel like now is actually like a relatively okay meta for it. So
yeah, I mean, no one's playing Deluge. I feel like respect for Yasan is probably at like.
It's not even
somewhat low.
It's not even necessarily about the answers for you. It's just more that like you're not gonna die before you can activate for the first time. Currently, I feel like. It seems like a lot of people are sort of on like stacks and mid range and stuff. So,
Yasan definitely plays in those metas, and then also because I've come up with a line that I think is the best Yasan line possible, or like the best current line. I'm not going to divulge it on the show right now. No.
It's again, this is gonna be coming out after the.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it'll probably be rid up in a primer or something, or someone else. It's not a joke. I'm not writing this on primer. No. But yeah, we'll
Aren't we expecting a primer this year?
We are expecting a primer this year from Noobzors.
Probably the Baral primer,
Probably.
The fact that I'm not playing Baral, recently is.
Yeah. You sound excited about Yasan. You should just make the Yasan primer.
Okay.
Well, that's fresh.
Dude, Yasan. Lyndon's deep in his midlife crisis when he starts contemplating writing a primer.
So that's it for what I've been up to or whatever. I think that's. Anyone else have anything, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing way more CDH than I usually do. Just prep for various tournaments.
Yeah, I noticed. Okay, you and Morgan it's been sad seeing the LFGs on turn up where you only get 3 people, and then I like post. I was like, I'll be around, and I'm like, I'm surprised that you guys weren't going LFG recently.
I've just been.
I was like,
this week,
I know we can finish out a pod this time.
Yeah. I would have LFG'd tonight if we weren't recording this. So.
Yeah, and it was my sister's birthday like this weekend, so I was busy doing family stuff, but I'll definitely
more important.
Be around for games.
Good, because I need to get LFG. Like I said, yeah, this tournament will help, but I Reed, I don't know if you'll appreciate this, but I remember I was playing. I come back to play Magic, and I was thinking, I was like, bro, are they called main phases in Magic?
Yikes,
or is that Yu-Gi-Oh? I missed.
All right, draw up, keep on. Wait.
And by rusty, he means just a pile of rust.
Go to end phase. All right,
someone goes to Demonic Tutor and I can't ash it, dude. What the heck?
They don't have extra special decks in this format.
First, I'll attack your Tymna with my Crom, and then I'll.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on to housekeeping. And as always in housekeeping, we like to shout out our new patrons. So this week we've got 3 new patrons. So I want to give a big shout out to Dylan,
Alex W,
and Lone Wolf.
I'm really dropping the ball on that one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lone
Hey
Wolf.
man, had to find the tab.
Can't just drop the rock like that, man.
Yeah. You guys rock. Fine, I'll say whatever. I thought I was gonna stop saying it, but no. Don't worry about
I mean, you definitely could have pushed the responsibility onto somebody else, but you just took it right back up, huh?
Yeah, I wanted to convince people that I was, gonna stop doing that, only to shock them by bringing it back.
Don't worry, no one
Make
believed
it cool
you.
again, all by yourself.
Yeah, thank you guys. And we talk about you in the end of the show and everything you do. So thank you. Moving on to new developments. I guess we mentioned this previously. We've got one item under new developments, and that is Marchesa, the upcoming tournament in Seattle at Mox Boarding House on the weekend of the 25th. right? That's the
26, I think, but yeah.
26. I don't know. Yeah. And then
Close enough.
that's So if you're going to that, we'll myself, Reed, and Morgan will be there. Unfortunately, Matt couldn't make it for that, and so come say hi, get in some games. I think I think it was closed or full up last time we mentioned it. So unfortunately, you can't get into the CDH main event, but there are other events going on.
Yep. I think Legacy still has spots open, and it's actually I think it was a pretty big prize pool. I don't think so. I think you can do Legacy and Conquest still. And actually, Legacy has a pretty substantial prize pool from what I remember. I have to check again, but I think the prize pool is actually bigger than the CDH events prize pool. So.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
well, I was thinking of getting a Legacy deck ready to go. So.
Yeah, so do it. Do it up.
I might. Yeah, we'll be down. We'll be down to hang out and play games all weekend. So come say hi if you're there. Which then brings us into the main topic of the show, which, as I mentioned previously, is Staples, not the business center, not the office supply place, but CDH Staples. So we start off with most of our topics. Definitions, everyone's favorite. What is a staple?
I'm ready for the half-hour semantic argument that'll make up the bulk of this episode's content.
Wikipedia defines a staple as
Webster's Dictionary.
Private corporation that sells a variety of.
Okay, well, I passed it along so that one of you could say what a staple is, but is that gonna happen? Morgan, Reed, Matt.
I mean, I think in terms of terminology, we should probably lay down some ground rules about what we're talking about here. Just because, I think we'll be talking about variously at different points of this podcast, probably staples. What are currently called auto includes. Morgan, you're gonna have to go on your own rant about that.
Wait, no, that's not. I feel like you're misinterpreting. I'm pushing for the use of a term that is separate from auto include.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I like that other
rant
stuff.
after this.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Just go for that.
No, you gotta rant, dude. Ranting is creepy.
All right.
Like staples auto includes like generally good cards, I guess, and there's sort of like situational staples. So I don't know who put this here or wrote this down, but like they're like different tiers of staples, and we'll sort of like go through what we mean by those. And so I'd say the difference between staples and auto includes are more that like staples are the first things that come to your mind when you think about either like just a CDH deck in general. I get actually I guess staples are like the larger category, which include like a subset of which are auto includes, but they also include like second level and third level staples that aren't auto includes. But the auto includes are stuff like Mana Crypt and Soul Ring and that kind of thing.
Well, we'll get into this maybe a bit here, but I was gonna say I generally have the way people use staples. I feel like there's in general a staple is not something that the way we use staples in EDH and CDH. I think is a perversion of the way this term is normally used and supposed to be used, where people say this is a staple as if it's an argument that it should be in your deck, whereas as far as I see it, staple really is just a card that is a staple of a format or a deck archetype, where it's a card that you're gonna see a lot of, and it's usually kind of in terms of like, you want to own your copies of the staples because they're going to be playable in lots of different modern decks or something like that, right? They're cards that are seen a lot in the format. Like Force of Will is a staple because we see a lot of Force of Will in decks, and things tend to be staples because they are good, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that, Force of Will is going to be in most decks that can run it, but there's other staples that, might not want to... You're not going to run it in every deck just because it's playable. That's mini rant number one.
Probably like the main difference is that like in literally every other format, staple is a descriptive term, whereas it's sort of morphed into a prescriptive term in CDH.
That is true. Yeah.
Which is like sort of I think probably where a lot of our problems with that terminology stem, but I it's probably just too late to change the meaning of staple, like reassign what staple means in the format.
Like
So.
like a good example of staple is like and in terms of like the talking about buying cards and stuff, it's when people are building a budget deck or they're slowly upgrading their budget version of a CDH deck to CDH paper cards, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna buy, well, what should I buy next? And often people say, oh, or maybe I'll use Gitrog deck as an example, because this happens a lot on the server where people come in and ask, and so they'll be like, well, I'm missing only these 5 expensive pieces. What should I buy next? And then people will often say, well, while survival might be better for the Gitrog deck, itself, and it's a staple. So is Grim Monolith, for instance. But Grim Monolith is more of a staple than survival. It's going to see playing more decks. So then you should buy that before you buy survival. That's the sort of thing that gets discussed in terms of staples and stapliness, not necessarily the quality of the card. Something is not more of a staple because it's a better card than something else. It's just because it sees more play.
So I guess to sort of distill it, a staple is a commonly run and typically more generic card across a group of decks. Because I don't think we ever really we just kind of started using the word and then describing staples in terms of other definitions of staple and other formats, but yeah, so as a baseline, we're talking about the cards that go in a lot of decks. Typically, they're going to be more generic, though they don't necessarily, like some, there can be, say, archetype specific staples, that may be a little bit less generic, but yeah.
So speaking of archetype staples, that's our next point on this list. So Morgan, why don't you mentioned it last? Throwing this to you. Talk about archetype staple.
Sure. So an archetype staple is a card that when building a specific archetype of deck, you're going to be very likely to include. This is contrasted with something that you might call like a format staple, where more or less, I guess, most decks in the format would be including it as a default, or a color staple, which is the same, but obviously only for decks of a specific color. So something like an archetype staple might be a card like Dark Ritual, which is going to go in more or less every deck with an ad nauseum, every deck that's trying to go fast, and it's obviously a very powerful card, but doesn't necessarily just go in every black deck. Like, there are lots of black decks that aren't really interested in a Dark Ritual, like various, Thrasios X mid-range type piles or things like that, aren't super into trading a single card for like just the very short-term explosiveness. And so when we talk about staples, and when you're brewing a deck, it's important to sort of figure out, okay, what archetype is this deck, what archetypes does it fit into, and then like what are the staples for those archetypes, as a baseline of like, here are cards I should probably at least be looking to include, if not, just sort of automatically include them.
Yeah, another archetype staple we already mentioned is survival. That kind of graveyard/creature based combo deck.
Yeah,
a couple of those.
That's definitely another good one, and I think that's a good illustration of like, the comment that I made, that staples are generally more generic, but like not always. Certainly, archetype staples are the ones that are, I would say, more likely to be non-generic, and I think Survival of the Fittest is a great example of that, where like I don't think most people would consider Survival of the Fittest a generic card, unlike, compared to, say, like Demonic Tutor or Vampiric Tutor. It's a pretty,
or even like more directly comparable, like even to Worldly Tutor.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. Where do
like-
you guys think Gaia's Cradle falls? As far as
Generic staple.
generic staple?
It's actually a good question, because I think my answer 2 years ago probably would have been generic staple, but at this point I think it's probably closer to maybe not like a specific archetype staple, but like a broader archetype staple, so like more like mid-range rather than specifically like cats or talk or something like that.
But I mean,
like I wouldn't call it
you
like
run it in decks that you wouldn't call mid range. Like you're gonna run it in all.
okay, yeah.
I mean,
It's hard.
it
I feel like it's hard to
it can be a staple in multiple archetypes, right? Like,
without being a global staple.
without being
It's
a
definitely
a
not
global
going in
staple, I
every
would
green
say.
deck.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but I think it's if it's a staple of like 5 different archetypes, generic at that point. If you're not gonna put it, which kind of brings it back to my point what I was saying earlier, which is a staple does not mean it needs to be in every deck, right? It doesn't need to be in every green deck for it to be considered a generic staple.
Yeah,
Is it something that you're going to seeing a lot in the format across decks that can play it? Then if yes, then it's pretty. Unless it's they all have the same archetype in common, but if they don't, probably.
Low colored green with a mana outlet in the
Yeah.
green zone.
and I'd say like Reed definitely touched on it, but there are sort of different types of staples, and people don't always mean the same thing. It's not always clear. And we mentioned the term auto include, which would probably be the sort of the highest tier of staple, if you will, where it's like this card you put it in your deck. Like the people have the playmat like Soul Ring, 98 more cards to go, or like Mana Crypt, or even some of the color staples. Like you need a pretty special reason to not put Demonic Tutor in your deck.
Or going to lands like Command Tower.
Other than playing a monocolor deck,
except for like monocolored decks, but like for the most part, it's just like you're just playing this card, whether you like it or not. You're like always going to be playing those like lands. You're always or like the lands that you can't get your hands on, fetch lands. You're always going to be playing like the mana positive rocks for the most part, like the holy quadrinity of Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Weird question that I just thought of as you were talking about lands and Command Tower. And do you think it's better to run let's say you were playing an Azorius deck and you were doing Mystic Sanctuary stuff so that you need to be concerned about island count. So you only have a few like dual lands that aren't islands, right? And let's say it's just one. You're comparing it's like Sky Cloud, whatever
Sky Cloud Expanse.
That's the Battle Bond land, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you're running the one that comes in to play untapped. You can have 2 or more opponents, and you're comparing that to Command Tower, where the benefit of not running Expanse over Command Tower is that it doesn't turn on
Exotic Orchards.
Exotic Orchards early, yeah.
Wait,
so that
no,
if
that's
you were
not
It
how
still
that
does
works.
though, because Command Tower isn't a 5-color land.
Oh, that is true. That
Yeah.
is true. Yeah.
No, so
Okay,
so
maybe Command Tower is
the actual
Yeah.
there's like the only weird thing is like for people naming stuff, or like things that care about stuff having the same name as other cards.
And when brawl players start playing Predict, and they just
Oh no.
And the downside of Skycloud Expanse is that if 2 of your opponents die, it comes in tapped.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea was basically the generic 5. I mean, but yeah, obviously it doesn't work because Command Tower is just too potent anyway. But I get the idea could be applied to like, I don't know, some land versus. I mean, there's no really great comparison because I mean, there's downsides to City of Brass and Mana Confidence or whatever. But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's just
well, that was a failed thought experiment.
Okay, moving on. Morgan, you were saying?
Yeah, I guess
Question.
I would say like sort of below the auto includes is a term that someone asked a question on our Discord server and I responded. It was actually about Carpet of Flowers, but I think it's actually a good term to use generically, which is a default include. So a default include would be a card that, like, if you were to pick a random deck sort of in your archetype and colors, you would expect to find it, but you wouldn't, like, shoot the person a DM if it wasn't in there, asking about it, you know?
Bro, I'd freaking ask people if Carpet of Flowers was in their deck.
And, like,
Yeah,
it's one where you might reasonably expect to find metas where it doesn't perform as well, or decks where, you know, it doesn't quite work as well, cutting it without sort of needing, like, a super special crazy reason. And
is there do you have like a couple of examples that aren't
I think a lot of the blue counter magic I would put in that category, like the best ones, like a card like Swan Song, for example, or Flusterstorm. I mean, these are cards where
Dispel is
I
closer.
feel like
I'd
Dispel's
say
better
like
than Swan Song.
most decks should probably be on Swan Song if they're on any counter magic, but yeah. Like,
sure,
I definitely get what you're saying.
Like, definitely, you should probably be on Swan Song, but, like, cutting Swan Song is certainly, you know, less. I'd have fewer questions about someone who wanted to cut Swan Song than someone who wanted to cut, say, Vampiric Tutor.
Sure.
And like, yeah, sure, maybe Dispel is, like, slightly more, you know, it's obviously not as good as Swan Song. Maybe that's, like, slightly more where you draw the line. But that general class of cards where, like, okay, if you pick a random blue deck off the database, for example, like, it's probably running Dispel, but there are probably some that aren't. You know, like,
Yeah.
like, I'm thinking of, like, Kenrith Stacks, you know, plays, like, a very limited set of counter magic, and, like, typically the things that it's threatened by aren't instants, so, like, maybe it's not playing it. Or things like that. And I think, like, it's a good term to sort of differentiate, like, a card that you should probably think about trying to play, but, like, you don't necessarily need to come up with a justification for not playing it in the same way that you might for what would typically be classed as an auto-include.
Yeah, I guess, like, staples sort of exist on the spectrum of, like, or, like, I guess card classification as staples sort of exists on the spectrum of you need an explanation to not play it versus you need an explanation to play it, and sort of the gradient between those 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
I hate that.
But, well, I'm not saying you have to think about it this way. I'm just, like, as a way to visualize it, and, like, the auto includes are at the infinitesimally small point at the end of you need a justification for not playing this, and then sort of the second level includes are like 2/3 of the way over there, or like 3/4 of the way over there, but not quite all the way at the limit.
I mean,
so are we doing the rant thing that I had that we had planned now, and then saving the other stuff for later, or do we want to save it for later?
Let's get it over with.
Okay.
Because
Why not?
So this mentality of I think kind of betrays a poor mindset for brew, or like a brewing mindset that is going to result in suboptimal decks, and I think results in a lot of what, you know, people might complain as, like, you know, you look on the database and look at a bunch of deck lists, and
Stapleitis.
You know, it's stapleitis, man. Like, people are just putting staples in their deck because they think that's what they should be doing, and they don't want to, like, look embarrassed because they're missing some staple card. That is not going to result in the best deck possible. Ideally, what should happen is that no card is an auto include or default include. Everything, you are justifying every single card in your deck as you're putting it in, not necessarily justifying it as it's coming out, because I tend to think that, I mean, and this is just a bit of justifying going in versus justifying coming out. Your card should have to. You start with a bunch of staples in your deck, and then you start justifying why they're not out before you even have the rest of your deck in there, it becomes hard to kind of do that, right? So I think it's you should kind of, as you're starting a deck from scratch, figure out what the deck is trying to do, start adding in the engine pieces, the mana ramp, or how you're going to cast your commander on curve, all of this stuff, how you're going to win the game, and then justifying adding the cards in as you're doing that. Whereas I think if you just start throwing in a bunch of staples, and I give an example, like Thada Adele. When I was brewing Thada Adele with friend of the show Keebitson, we kind of did a similar thing where it's like, okay, well, let's put in the ramp package. We want to cast our commander on turn 2. What are all the things that are going to allow us to do that? And so, we kind of put in Soul Ring, or Mana Crypt, all this stuff, Lotus Petal, and then what we kind of realized later on, and after doing some actual playtesting, thinking about it, is Mana Crypt is actually causing problems for this deck in how it tries to win the game, because you're looping a turn spell, and because your commander is not actually breaking parity on the turns loop with Mystic Sanctuary, because you're not able to dig through your deck further at all, you realistically have a strong chance to just die from your Mana Crypt before you can kill everyone else with like a 1/1 flyer or a 2/2 Island Walker. So Mana Crypt is a liability and stops you from being able to combo, and there's no easy way to remove it. So we kind of quickly figured out that I don't want to be grabbing Mana Crypt with that Adele, but also I probably don't want to have Mana Crypt in my deck, because it adds you have to find specifically like resculpt or something to remove it. So yeah, like if I'm thinking about that before I put it in my deck and thinking about my win condition, I can avoid that kind of situation. And I think that's just kind of the better philosophy overall for deck building, is it has to have justified its place in the deck before it even makes it into the list. And I think just staples and that kind of mentality just leads to Soul Ring and Mana Crypt and all my other staples in the deck. What other 30 cards do I fill it with?
I think needing to justify every single card is slightly over idealized, because that is like a significant amount of mental burden and playtesting. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna have notes on why Swan Song is good. Like, I don't think I need to have notes on it. But I do understand your point, which is like staples are typically not part of the core package of a deck, like, which is why you probably shouldn't start with the staples.
Yeah, I mean, because you could just make you could take the Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, that same kind of ramp engine from every other deck, and just have that be the thing that you load up into your deck list right at the beginning, and you're gonna get a deck that's like decent, right? It's if you're playing Mana Crypt and Thada Adele, no one's gonna bat an eye. In fact, people are gonna they're more gonna think like, why aren't they running that? But yeah, I think that you just don't end up in the optimal spot if you take that kind of approach.
So I feel like you're pushing back against like an extremely literal interpretation that isn't necessarily like what people mean. Like, obviously, yes, you should think about the cards that you're putting in your decks. That's not like a hot take. But and I think what you described with your Thada Adele brewing process is like what I was describing, right? You took Mana Crypt, you were like, this card is good. It costs 0. It taps for 2 mana repeatedly. That's kind of messed up. And then you went like, okay, well, I'll put it in my deck, and then upon evaluating, you went like, oh, there's actually like a problem with including this card in my deck. Maybe I need to reevaluate, and then you did, and then you took it out. I don't think we're seriously suggesting like not thinking about the cards that you're playing. I think we're saying there's a certain amount of available information coming from the collective brewing experience of everyone who's ever played this format that you can often use as like something of a shorthand in like or use as a resource.
Having brewed with people, though, I do feel like people fall into the trap of I can't cut this; it's a staple. You know, or
I think
the thing when thing has reached staple status, it becomes like beyond reproach. You can't cut it from your deck. You can't that's why I think my main point is, I guess, you a card has to have, there has to be some reason beyond it's popular, basically.
Yeah. So I think that's the point where like staples become a problem, is when you don't want to cut a card from your deck because it is a staple.
Yeah.
Like that is sort of like that shouldn't be happening, because I understand like I should put this in my deck because it's a staple. But like once you get to a point where you've tested with it and don't like it, but you can't cut it anymore, that's sort of an issue.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to summarize, everything we're saying here is like we're talking about heuristics, right? We're not we're saying like here's sort of like a good default starting position, and then you should obviously like evolve your thinking from there, as appropriate.
Yeah, and if you want to know whether or not you've fallen for traps or anything, just look through your deck list, and as Matt said, you don't necessarily want to have to be able to write a paragraph on why you're running Swan Song in your deck. I mean, primers or something. But if in your own head, can you justify why this card is in your deck as it pertains to your strategy and your commander, and not appealing to popularity or whatever.
Yeah, it's a bit more about deck building process, but take the time to reflect on your decisions, and if that decision was it's a staple, then there's a level of suspicion there.
Yeah, and I think kind of the auto include, default include thing really kind of boils down to just when you've justified Soul Ring in your deck, in 100 of your decks that you brewed every time, you don't necessarily feel the need to go through that exercise every time. But it can sometimes be worth it, because they're, like, as we pointed out, there's occasionally there will be an instance where you're going to run into something where you might not want to run it through the strategy thing. But yeah, that was that. Well, I guess so. That was kind of wrapped into the topic of when can you cut staples. Do you guys have anything to say on that kind of statement more broadly, or did we cover it sufficiently?
Well, if they actively kill you, like Mana Crypt in a turns deck, then that's definitely a good spot.
Good sign.
Okay, so then I guess we've covered that. Is this also? Is there more to say about stapleitis, or is stapleitis also kind of encapsulated in that segment?
I mean, we could talk about sort of the impact of stabilized on the format, but it's, I don't know, is that well understood enough or whatever? Well, it's just more that, like, I think we're seeing, well, how do I put this? It's sort of like there are issues with, like, sticking to staples far too much, which manifest themselves not as, it's not really like this explicit problem or like something that's like super visible, but typically what you end up with isn't really, when there's like an overabundance of stabilizers, it's not that you can't brew new stuff anymore, or like it gets harder to brew new decks. I find that
tend to stagnate a bit.
Well, yeah, so things do stagnate when like stabilize persists, or like just like is way too entrenched in the minds of whoever is actively playing CDH at that point in time. But I don't think it's an issue with like brewing being harder because all the slots are locked in all these decks or whatever. I think it's actually more of an issue with people just getting bored or discouraged from brewing, because like there's this perception that you have to play all these things in your deck and then you only have like 20 slots to work with or whatever. So it's sort of like, yeah, I think that probably the healthy medium, and we're probably swinging the pendulum more toward that now, is having a healthy respect for staples, but not necessarily feeling the need to absolutely play all of them in any new brew.
Yeah. I mean, part of, and pushing against the kind of tide of stapleitis can be tough, right? It's like, I mean, sometimes it might just feel like it's not worth it. I mean, like, I picked Arcane Denial as a hill to die on, and the thing is like you, Morgan, and Reed, you guys who've met, who've seen the argument put forth and are like, you'll disagree with the argument after hearing it and understanding it, is one thing, but then it's another thing to kind of just like hear Arcane Denial, and someone's like, oh, here's the argument, and it's like, I'm not gonna bother to read this. I'm confident that Counterspell is better because that's how it's always been. So like I feel like there can be a bit, and I don't want to kind of paint as if that's what everyone is doing. Lots of people are willing to listen, but that is a mentality that can kind of creep in, and so yeah, try not to be that person. Try and keep your mind open to things that might be against the norm if there's valid reasoning there. Yeah, that's
the staple argument changes.
Who knows?
I've seen a whole lot fewer negates.
Let's go.
God, every time negate is mentioned, it just makes me sad that Dovin's veto had so little time to exist.
Well, I think Dovin's veto's underplayed, man.
It's fine. It's fine.
That's that you don't need to commit additional resources from your hand to defend or to put a stop to something is pretty.
Yeah,
powerful.
But having one of the worst color pips in the game stuck on your counterspell that you need to pay to cast it sort of sucks.
True.
I think interaction's honestly just more complicated than just counterspells, at least compared to 6 years ago.
Oh, I mean, pretty much like the addition of Veil and SWAT single-handedly changed the landscape like an insane amount, but yeah.
Those stand out.
Well, misdirection still the another good counter.
I'm not getting into this right now, but people don't give enough respect to misdirection.
It's unbelievable.
Still nuts.
I think
it's insane how good that card is in a lot of archetypes.
Yeah, we align as a podcast.
I think I'm not going to extol the virtues of misdirection to this podcast. I'm pretty sure we're all like
everyone here is very much.
I'm
for misdirection.
I'm medium on misdirection. Like it's a very playable card, but I don't think I'm nearly as excited about putting it in decks as
I'm not excited. I think it's a good card in the archetype.
I'm not excited. You could have fooled me.
Is it a staple or an archetype staple?
If you're playing any blue deck that needs to stick a permanent for an extended period of time, it's your like go-to second free counterspell.
Looks at my command zone, realizes I have something I want to stick.
Yeah, I mean, I think and you can compare it to something like Force of Negation too. I think people probably play Force of Negation at a higher clip than they should compared to Misdirection. I think there's decks that are running Force of Negation that would rather have Misdirection in that slot.
Which is no. Okay. I'm not going to shill Misdirection at the expense of Force of Negation.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna say that.
No, but it's like they each have their own benefits. I mean, Force of Negation can't protect your combo on your turn.
But I also don't play Misdirection in the Force of Negation slot, so I'm just I don't feel the need to directly compare.
I was looking at it was like some Roger Silas deck that someone was running Force of Negation in, and then there's discussion over Misdirection versus Force of Negation for that specific slot. And just the fact that there's it's not like a strict kind of Force of Will is based. I mean, it's not even strict better because there's obviously things that Misdirection could stop over Force of Will, but the when one can protect your combo, one can't, that's kind of a more of a one can stop your opponents better than the other, one can stop.
But Linton, did you know that Adnos is an instant? Crazy, right?
Whoa.
Whoa. Oh, dude, when's the last time you saw Adnos cast? Are you even sure it's an instant? I can't remember the last time I've seen this cast at instant speed.
Yeah, go to combat, Adnos. It's a goddamn instant.
That's why we need I forget what the commander's called, but the Naya commander that's a Grand Abolisher in combat.
Oh my god.
Give it black.
Something like Karth.
You know,
I look at commanders like that more often than I should. There's also
there's
also the Boros one, right?
Oh no, it's Jared Karth Thalion.
Oh no, I was talking about Marisi, Breaker of the Coil.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, we're getting off track here, but I'm gonna persist on this. I tried to make Marisi work for far too long, just because I was like, this has to be good, right? Like, it's a Grand Abolisher in the command zone, but like, you just need to be doing your stuff in combat. That can't be that hard, right? Let me tell you, doing stuff at instant speed in Naya, not an easy proposition.
Instant speed creature-based combo deck.
Yeah, I may have been playing Aetherville and Court of Calling and Yasan in that deck just to try to get all of it to come together. Didn't work.
Aetherville is a generic staple for a read. It's not archetype.
It just goes in everything, dude.
Non-color, non-archetype.
It's a staple of the Reed TNT archetype.
I'd play Aetherville in frickin' Polytyrant.
Wow.
Dude, you can put it in Cody, and then it lets you put in a dockside after you cast Cody, and then use the dockside to pay for the Cody activation. Oh my god!
Told ya.
Okay, so our next category here is staple packages. And when, we skipped over. When in the brewing process do you add staples? I feel like, we covered that. And then staple packages is what's left.
Yeah. Staple packages really kick in once you get to that kind of self-reflection point and you realize that you can cut staples. But it's nice to know, it's nice to have handy groups.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then also, like, I think there are a lot of cards that, like, I wouldn't consider playing on their own, but as a group of whatever number, then they sort of become like staple packages that you just would sort of include for a given archetype. I'd say like that kind of package definitely, like an example would probably be like Entomb plus Reanimates for stuff like Razakats, where like if you're playing a Cats deck, like you're going to be playing the Reanimates and Entomb almost all the time, and like you're probably never playing a substantial number of Reanimates without an Entomb, or vice versa. I mean, very rarely you'll see an Entomb without Reanimates in the deck, but I'd still consider it a staple for like archetypes, right?
Yep. When do you blur the lines between like staple packages and combo packages? Like, would you consider Felidar Guardian to be a staple of like the Birthing Pod package?
Yes. Because
but is that a staple package, or is that
again? Yeah, this is where the
terminology.
I'm trying to get over.
I mean, do you consider survival the finished a combo piece? Like,
is the card popularly played? Yes.
Yes. No. Okay. Cool.
Damn it.
Yeah, we've got lands, dorks, rocks. I don't know how much. Without just listing all the staples, right? Like, I guess it's just the benefit of kind of these packages of staples is reducing your Scryfall search. Like, you don't have to search through. There's when you're looking to you're playing green deck. You're like, I want dorks in this deck. You can look up go to the staple package of it, and you can know. These are the for sure dorks that I know these are all the dorks that just tap for green, plainly, and these are the there's Boreal Druid and whatever, so you don't need to scrap all that.
I think the dorks also do like a pretty good job of sort of illustrating like the like stratified tiers of staple, where you have like the hierarchs, birds, and like Deathrite Shaman as cards. Like those are cards that go in like almost every green deck, even the ones that like you might think are quote unquote too fast for dorks, or like that's really not their game plan, have tended to run like at least that set. And then below that you have the green producing dorks, that like lots of green decks run, but also, the higher color faster type stuff maybe isn't as interested. And then below that you have like the weird dorks like Boreal Druid that, only the ones that are on like a
Boreal
full
Druid, Arbor Elf, Derogatory Speaker.
Yeah, and then those are the ones where you start to have to justify to, like, 'cause I mean, Arbor Elf is one where it's very common in low color green, it's common in low color green and then also in high color green. But notably a deck like that I've done a lot of work with Gitrog, we don't run Arbor Elf. There's points where there was in the past, but the main justification is that there's many keepable hands. So we run Boreal Druid but not Arbor Elf, and the main justification is that there's many keepable hands that will not have a forest. And if Arbor Elf is your ramp, then you're just SOL. Whereas Boreal Druid, the colorless mana is fine. If you're just going City of Brass into Boreal Druid, you're happy with that because you can make the colors from your lands. And really, what that boils down to is just forest count, right? In mono green, your deck is just filled with forest, so that's never an issue. And then Arbor Elf is just as good as Findhorn Elves. Can have different utility. But then, it might take a dip in forest count as you're going to 2 color, and then you might increase as you're going back up to 4 color. So be sure you're able to justify the inclusion in the deck, because sometimes it won't be. Rocks, we've got the basic ones, and then we've also got our signets and talismans and the rest of the party.
Yeah, mana positive, typically aligning more to like generic staple, and then the others closer to archetype, I guess, or color.
Has there been a trend that's just been less and less? Like I have in my games and stuff, and looking at stuff, I've just seen less like signets and talismans and stuff than.
Yeah, I mean it's the explosion. It's the explosion of fast mana, and like your non-green deck having to do its thing faster, but like being forced to execute its game plan faster, which is like what it like pretty much directly results in fewer 2-mana rocks. Like when 2-mana rocks were at their peak, when we were playing like pretty much all of the signets for your color plus all of the talismans for your color plus Felwar Stone.
Yeah.
At that time, there was certainly less pressure to do your thing that quickly. Whereas now I feel like there's almost this omnipresent need in pretty much every deck archetype at this point. Like stacks, turbo, mid-range, you name it, to like do your thing in the first turn of the game or first 2 turns of the game. And 2 CMC rocks just don't really align with that all that well. So that's why we're seeing like you'll see a lot more shift away from those and more into Mopal, but also like rituals and lower quality rituals than we were seeing before, stuff like Rite of Flame, both Spirit Guides a lot of the time in those kinds of decks. I guess like you can't say both Spirit Guides for non-green decks, but like just that kind of stuff. Things that accelerate you by 1 Tinder Wall, so that you can do your thing on turn 1 rather than having to like cantrip on turn 1, play a rock on turn 2, holding up mana, turn 3, do your thing.
Yeah. And then so we've done lands, dorks, rocks. Now we've got tutors, counter spells, and card advantage. You guys want to talk about those?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're self-explanatory for the most part, right? Like you have your tutor package typically consists of whatever top deck tutors are legal in your colors plus the good black tutors. And then if you're a creature deck, you just play the green creature tutors up to a point where you're no longer happy playing the next creature tutor. Like it's just you just keep putting them in until you're not happy with the quality of the ones that you're putting in anymore.
Okay, but
I feel like unless you're talking about black tutors, they're like I'm definitely not just jamming all of the top deck tutors I can in my colors.
Yeah, I was about to say something similar. How many
in higher color decks?
Like
certainly.
I'm definitely not playing Worldly Tutor in all my green decks. That's
yeah. Well,
Enlightened Tutor.
I think Enlightened Tutor is probably the worst of the bunch, or like the least playable.
Mystical Tutor is like is a hard one to pass.
I mean, didn't you cut Mystical Tutor from Hermitrid?
Yeah, I mean, I also cut Enlightened Tutor, but
yeah, right. So I mean,
like restricted scope though.
So you cut 2 out of 3 of them. Like, I think that's
yeah, but I'd say that like the Hermitrid decks that I play are sort of the antithesis of a lot of the staple talk, because they just don't play good cards that you would expect them to play for various reasons. Anyway, yeah.
They do have like very low activation conditions, like with a handful of good creatures. Worldly Tutor seems
like
easy
you're playing Dockside Thoracle and like one other utility thing. Great, I'll put a Worldly Tutor in the deck so I can find them when I need them. Like,
Yep. Tutors, counter spells, card advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit that counter spell threshold already with the misdirection.
The discussion quota for counter magic.
And then lastly, card advantage.
Do we dare talk about cantrips?
Oh god.
Oh no.
And under the category of card advantage, probably not.
I mean, we can split this up. Okay, let's talk about card advantage under the scope of 2 different subsections, being persistent card advantage and temporary card advantage. And we'll talk about temporary card advantage, not in concept of like ad nauseum and necropotence and peer into the abyss, because those aren't card advantage. Those are win cons. Don't at me. We're skipping those. But for stuff like one-time card advantage, I'd say like things like that you're not expecting to win the game from resolving, but like put you up in cards or put you up in selection. So things like cantrips. I don't know. Like what's
It pains me to even say I'm not going to talk about cantrips. I'm talking about card advantage. It's not advantage.
Card selection. Fine.
Cards.
Selecting
about card
which
selection.
cards
Anyway.
you have is an advantage.
Anyway, persistent ones would be stuff like Mystic Remora, Sylvan Library, Ristic Study, that kind of stuff. I don't like what are. That's probably there's probably like the
Esper
biggest
Sentinel?
drop off after those. I guess Esper Sentinel is up there now as well.
There you go, Zach, just
as
for
like
you.
the 4 big ones. Which is sort of interesting as well, because that's another category that's been that's started to be cut down in the same way that 2 CMC rocks are.
We used to see Rob.
Yeah. And even then, like, we're now seeing less Sylvan Library. There's some decks that just like straight up apparently think that Ristic Study is too expensive. I personally disagree with that in a lot of cases, but
that's not
still like,
I mean, we didn't
fine.
play it in
clearly play
Cody,
against a
and I
very
was
high
on board for that. But
yeah, most stuff is gonna want like whatever they can get out of that list, though.
People just saw Cody list without Ristic Study. Well, Ristic Study's bad now, I guess.
Just dude, unplayable.
The best deck doesn't play Ristic Study. Oh no. Sylvan Library is a surprising one, I do have to say.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of get it, but also, yeah. I think it makes sense that exactly the turbo decks that need enough life total to cast an ad nauseum and still win the game because their curve is super high. But I think if your curve is low enough, you just like straight up shouldn't really care about the life loss that much, especially considering like you can usually put together a win from the rest of the stuff in your deck without an ad nauseum. Like you can just do preach stuff or just do Thoracle stuff instead. I don't know. Maybe that's the take that gets me in trouble, but yeah.
Wait, you thought you weren't already in trouble?
Just forgetting Esper Sentinel?
I don't know.
Or what, the misdirection take? Just in general?
In general.
Yeah, that's fair.
You expressed an opinion on the internet, so it was nice knowing you.
Take him down, that's it. And then, let's have the cantrip conversation.
Boo, they suck.
Okay, so certainly the top one that like you're almost always going to see in lists is Brainstorm still. I think for the most part Brainstorm's just flexible enough that there's pretty much everything's playing it.
Here. There's 3 different groups of the cantrips, okay?
It's
There's
Brainstorm,
one that's in its own.
Ponder, and then Preordain plus everything else.
It's Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, and then Getaxian Probe is in its own category. because Gataxian Probe cantrips, but it offers no selection. It's literally only offers information. So it's kind of like in its own category, but it is grouped in cantrips.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I rank Probe higher on like the staple list for some reason.
I rank it higher than all of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not costing mana is also pretty big upside.
It's
exactly.
Like, it's
so
like
the thing with the cantrips is, for this selection, you are sacrificing mana, which is, that's the trade. You're not sacrificing cards because they replace themselves, but in order to get this selection and dig through, you are paying mana. And the way for the amount of selection they offer, I believe cantrips are generally not worth it. Looking at the top 3 for 1 mana, I generally evaluate to not be efficient enough. I don't think. I mean, you're comparing it to you're comparing it to tutors, for instance, right? Like your tutors are looking through your entire deck for a specific card. I mean, the Monarch tutor goes right to hand, but with your top deck tutors, you're trading the card advantage for that level of selection, right? Like how deep, like a good thing to look at is like how deep would index have to be, where you'd run that over like a cantrip, which is just like pure selection.
What is index again? Is it
5? You look at the top 5.
Yeah.
But you don't get to bottom any of them. It's just reorder top 5.
Which brings me actually to Ponder. Okay,
that's pretty close.
So and Brainstorm. Ponder and Brainstorm are actually only good if they're if you're fetching after them afterwards. Like that's the only reason they're providing.
The case for Ponder.
It's not a completely true. But sorry, Reed.
That's not necessarily the case for Ponder. Ponder a lot of the time.
The thing is Ponder's not actually providing you selection if you are forced to use the built-in Ponder shuffle. Because imagine that there's a card that's
by
in
definition
your top 3.
Is selection.
Reed, imagine there's cards in the top 3 that let's say you're looking for a land or something, okay? And in their top 3, you've got a land, and then the next 2 cards are like complete bricks, right? Do you put the land on top and keep that, or do you shuffle?
I mean, so yes.
If the answer is shuffle because the other 2 are bricks, it's basically doing nothing.
I'm not saying shuffle is irrelevant to the card evaluation of Ponder as a like card selection engine. I'm saying it's nowhere near as integral to the effect of Ponder as it is to Brainstorm.
Oh, I think it's quite. It's not as integral, but I think it's quite integral. Like I do not like Ponder without shuffling because it just becomes.
But the fact that it has a built-in shuffle means that it's like leagues better without an additional shuffle.
It means that if the top 3, the only good case for the shuffle is when the top 3 are, you don't want any of the top 3, right? That's the built-in shuffle.
I mean, not compared to Brainstorm, because like the other good case is like I need one of the top 3 cards, not that much, and the other 2 are like fine, but like sort of bricky. Like Brainstorm without the shuffle is okay. I have just like 3 dead draws, basically. Great.
Yeah.
Ponder is, okay, like, I'm gonna throw away the thing that I sort of need, but at least I can shuffle and try to find, like, a better sequence of cards without the additional shuffle.
Yeah, I feel like the top 3 being duds is pretty much, within variance except for the most redundant decks. Like, that's a reasonable...
Well, I think the more common, it's not going to be that common that you're going to see all 3 duds and you get the true shuffle value on. But, so this is... What I generally think is the most generically playable one is Preordained because it requires no shuffle to get the actual selection.
I mean, I think that's also...
You're getting your scries and your draw.
I think that's also, like, you're evaluating cards kind of outside of the context of a game where, for example, like, if you Ponder and you see 2 duds and a Force of Will, like that's not just there's 3 cards, like maybe you need this counterspell right now, and then you actually have some way
but
to
then
like
to me, what you're doing is you need to have, like, when you're putting in a tutor or a like a cantrip or something, right? You're doing it to increase the consistency of getting your other cards, right? Of having, hitting your land drops or doing something like that. And like a tutor, so like when you're putting in a card to a deck, and a good example of this could be Grist in Gitrog, right? Grist in Gitrog, we put in Grist, and it gives us, by putting in one card, we got like 5 copies of removal, right? Because now all of our tutors can also tutor forward. So the way that you kind of count cards, and that's kind of what cantrips, tutors kind of try and do, is they fix your ratios and smooth out hands. But if you just have like decent ratios of of lands and spells and stuff, like you're talking about Force of Will, what if we were looking at the case where it was Force of Will? What if we just had another counterspell in hand instead, right? Then we're up on our mana efficiency because we didn't have to spend 1 mana to replace a dead card in our hand with something useful, without actually affecting the rest of the. We didn't remove any bad cards from our future draws, right? All we did is trade 1 mana for a dead card in hand for the Force of Will. But if that was already counterspell, we'd be up on that. If we have enough lands, like I find Ponder for lands, like very rarely comes up. If your deck, like I generally find that if your deck is relying on cantrips to hit your land drops, you're probably not running enough mana.
I mean, yeah, I'd certainly agree that like the way the cantrips are touted in a format like Legacy, where they
way different,
where they're just like they smooth out and make your deck like way more consistent, is certainly like that's not how they work in CEDH, because you don't have the consistency for the cantrips to increase your consistency, right? Like it's not like, oh, I'm trying to find this card. I'm trying to find one of 2 cards, each of which is a 4 of in my deck. So whatever it is, like what's the math on that? That's like almost 15% of your deck is like the cards you're looking for. And so if you play 2 or 3 cantrips and you see like 6 or 7 cards, then like you're very, very likely to find it. But like that isn't how it works in CEDH. So I definitely agree with you that like you have to think about them very differently.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I think the Brainstorm and Ponder are like, if someone, so I'm generally opposed to running cantrips. I mean, Gitaxian Probe is more excusable, but just the Brainstorm and Ponder, I don't like the mana trade. But if people decide they want to run cantrips, I'm generally fine if they want to run Preordain. But I do see decks that run Brainstorm and Ponder that I think are just not running enough shuffles to really pull it off, and I think you see that a lot in mono blue. I just people will have like 10 shuffle effects in their deck and be like, yep, good enough for my Ponder Brainstorm to be good. And I don't think that it even when they're shuffling, if Brainstorm had the shuffle effect every time, it being an instant, I think that's reasonable for what it provides. But sorcery speed Ponder, even if I had the guaranteed shuffle every time, I'm not sure I'd be satisfied with that card in my deck.
I think if you had a consistent...
look at how much 1 mana matters when looking at like CDH card evaluation. Like compare Demonic Tutor, which, as we pointed out, was, if you're trying to look at it like a cantrip, it's infinite or selecting through your entire deck, right? Look at the top 90 cards of your library, pick 1, put them into your hand, and shuffle. So Demonic Tutor and then Grim Tutor, right? Grim Tutor sees like almost no play, which is 1 mana more than Demonic Tutor for to be able to select through your entire deck. And then you compare that to Ponder, and it seems crazy to me that Ponder would see, more play than something like Grim Tutor for what it provides.
Like, despite costing an extra generic and an extra colored pip. That's a
No, I just mean the difference between what, it's the 1 mana difference between Grim Tutor and Demonic Tutor. Right? Like, I mean, obviously we kind of know, I understand it. Most people understand that 1 mana in terms of cost for an effect can bring it from, one of the best cards in the format to a lot worse. And I mean, I'm not saying Grim Tutor should be in every deck thing. But just the fact that 1 mana difference, people aren't willing to pay that for something like a Grim Tutor for card selection, but they're willing to pay that 1 mana for the card selection on something like a Ponder or Pre. Not comparing, I wasn't directly comparing the Ponder cost difference to Grim Tutor, but to like the abstract what you're paying for card selection.
Okay, here's a data back, potentially data backed example of stapleitis. Okay, Hull Breacher printed. I mean, I know some people cut staples, but I saw or cut card advantage like Preordained Ponder, but I know that a lot of people kept it in.
That's true. Yeah, for a long time I was, and also with fetches, people will run in mono blue. They'll run, or they were running a lot of Prismatic Vista, which is something I was saying like, because they were running it because I was like, oh, it's another shuffle effect for my Ponder or Brainstorm, and it's free. And I'm like, it's not free. It's very much not free. People run Root Maze. People run Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon. I mean, back basics no, but
I remember even
Op Agent Mind Sensor. It's like it's not free.
Like 2016 or something. Yeah, like even like 2016. I remember there was that was still an ongoing discussion in Brostorm, because Brostorm played a bunch of basics, and it was like, and sometimes we play fetches and sometimes we don't, because again, people at that time were already playing. Yeah, like sometimes you run into Root Maze, sometimes you run into Blood Moon. You need to adjust this stuff. So yeah,
I mean, I guess versus sometimes you have a Sylvan library is like the question in Brostorm.
Yeah,
when people say deck thinning, I freaking laugh.
Or you need to use like Noxious Rival or Ewit to make a land drop or whatever. Like,
yeah, no, it's contentious. I think I wanted to do a similar analysis for Ponder and Preordain and kind of like the card selection that I was doing for Arcane and Isle, but I think that's a lot more complicated. Harder to kind of prove, so we'll see if that ever happens.
I just want to say one thing about card advantage. Back to your example of like 10 shuffle effects. I think that's actually reasonable if you have a very consistent source of card advantage like Tymna. Like, I think I would play Brainstorm. I mean, honestly, Tymna decks typically play more than 10 shuffle effects.
But if you're drawing through the Brainstorm draws, then what did Brainstorm do?
Yeah, but isn't that kind of counter to the legacy argument where you have the consistency?
But it's like
extra consistency.
It's like after you've seen them with Brainstorm and put them back, they're like tainted, And if you have to draw through them, it's like, would you rather draw like a fresh card that's been after a Brainstorm shuffle, or the card you put back off Brainstorm, right? Because if you're just drawing back let's say you're flooded and you Brainstorm, you put back a bunch of lands, but you have card advantage that lets you draw through, draw 2 cards to clear the Brainstorm. Like, you just draw 2 lands, you're just drawing 2 dead cards. Like, you just blanked your own draws.
Well, except for the fact that you saw the cards that like the real cards that were useful earlier and potentially got to like play them, right? Like I think that's one of the, like, I think it applies less to like Preordain and Ponder and more to Brainstorm, where like the very high, the very swingy nature of CDH and the just huge amount of stuff that changes really fast means that like you're seeing cards a turn sooner like matters a lot more than it does in a format like Legacy, where like you're just looking to eventually trade out one for one.
No, I mean that's certainly not an advantage of Brainstorm that I'm trying to deny. Like the way what I'm kind of more pushing back against is viewing that because you're able to clear the top of your library, that's not an actual downside. Like, because the way it'd be like Pact of Negation, right? Pact of Negation, you get to, there's obviously benefits to being able to counter stuff and instant speed for free, but the drawback is that you have to pay the 5 in your up. It's like I'm doing the Brainstorm. It's like the benefit is you can see the top 3 immediately and utilize them, but the drawback is that you've got 2 cards that you are just dead on top of your library. And what I'm saying is that if we want to say that you could stifle your Pact trigger and then that's mitigated. Shuffling your library mitigates that drawback, but drawing through them is not really mitigating that drawback because you would have had 2 actually, potentially useful cards instead of 2 dead cards. That's really all I was saying.
Yeah.
Like it is a cost that you have to, if you have 2 Tymna draws, that you're drawing the 2 cards you saw off of Brainstorm, instead of 2 fresh ones. Like that's not. You are paying.
For sure. But you I guess what I'm trying to say is that like
the benefit is worth it, is what you're saying.
Well, but also just like that the way CDH plays out, that may not be like it's I think I'm phrasing it somewhat poorly, but essentially that cost can also be mitigated by the timing, like having the cards you need when you need them is something that like actually mitigates the cost, right? Like if you're
I think to me it's the same as Pact of Negation. It's like, well, if you couldn't have, like if you had to pact, the fact that it's 0 cost mitigates the fact that you have to pay 5 in your upkeep and it's poor on average. Yeah, there's certainly times when it will mitigate the cost. I don't think it's mitigating the cost every time. Like I don't think, like it really needs to find something super time. Otherwise, the drawback is quite rough for what you paid for.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't say every time, but I think
most of the time.
Well, no, I was more thinking about Pact. Like people play Pact in CDH in a way that they generally don't in a format like Legacy, and I think it's for similar reasons that that like a Brainstorm with no shuffle might be better in CDH than it is in Legacy, is I guess what I would
What do you mean people play it in CDH for different reasons than Legacy?
No, I'm not saying they play it for different reasons. I'm saying they play it like it's a card that goes in a lot of CDH decks and not a lot of Legacy decks.
Oh, sure. I think it's... Yeah, no, sure. That's very true. Although that's what I did recently, was doing brewing with a Legacy deck where it was Pact had to be Pact.
I think this all loosely ties into Archetype Staples, right?
Well, so now that we've established what a staple is, we can get into the real meat and potatoes of the show. But yeah, I mean, we could do a whole fucking episode on cantrips, man, or me versus everyone else.
Versus the
I feel like I'm always the hater on, and then you guys are the
voices of
who
reason.
follow. No, the sheeple.
The straight men. Yeah.
The arcane denial debacle.
One of you has to come to my side for that episode. But yeah.
The arcane deniers? Or is that someone who plays arcane
if you're
denial?
An arcane denier, are you
Yeah.
are you supporting arcane denial, or are you denying it? Yeah, so I think that about does it for our main topic. Which means it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Gut Check!
Good check.
Get check.
Gotcha.
Woo! Okay. This week's Gut Check is... What's the best full art, or what is the best cycle of full art basic lands?
Oh my god. Oh.
This is definitely inspired by the fact that
What What if you don't play
I mean,
full
they just
art
released.
lands?
They just got Neon Dynasty with these like very beautiful ukiyo-e, I don't know how it's pronounced. Kind of basic lands, and then also they just released spoilers for New Capenna or New Capena, I don't know. And it's they've got some cool Art Deco full arts. It's like, damn, they're going hard on the full art basics recently. So very
Yeah, I have my choice. I need to get the name. I don't know what they're called.
Let's see.
Where?
Nope.
I've got like two answers, sort of. I'll give like what my kind of my true answer, what I feel, and then I'll give like a secondary one.
I do have to say though, I definitely not looking for full art land when I'm tipping a deck out. I have to pick.
If I was
that's
to
the
say
gut
what is
check,
your
but
favorite basic lands, I feel like that's
That's a whole
too
different
big. The scope
Yeah.
is too big for a gut check.
My forests need to have like the thickest trunks. I don't know. Something about it.
Okay, Reed, Morgan, you got yours?
Not yet. I'm still thinking.
Matt, I'll never forget
easy.
you describing your, I forget what deck you were building, but you were like, I just want some big cock trees.
Goreclaw. It was Stompy Storm.
Was it? I feel like
Yeah.
it was before you built Goreclaw.
No, I remember it was Goreclaw. It was Goreclaw.
It was definitely Goreclaw. Yeah. I don't think I've built very many mono green decks. Seriously, at least.
Yeah, I guess I got one. Yeah. Oh wait, but it's a full cycle.
It can be the cycle that has your favorite one in it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh,
We'll just run it.
I feel like whatever.
Morgan, you got yours?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll lead with my kind of like boring answer, which I'll potentially change up if or I'll give my secondary answer after everyone's done it first. And mine is just the Neon Dynasty lands. I think they're very, very cool.
Wow. They are cool.
Yeah, that's mine.
So basic.
It is kind of basic.
So basic. so full of base. Yeah. Pixel
yours, Matt?
Snowlands.
Snow. The full art snows.
The pixel
hated those.
the pixel snowlands.
Oh, the pixel ones. Oh, those are good.
Yeah,
Those
with
are
like
good.
the vintage icons at the top right is.
I thought you were going with like the modern Horizons full art snows. I'm like, I hated those, dude. Like they had when I heard they were getting full art snow basics, I was gonna lose my shit. I was like, yo, this is gonna be awesome. And then they weren't.
Yeah,
They all
the
look
next
the same.
next deck where I have limited amount of basics, I'll definitely grab a set of these.
Hey, Reed, what about you?
So I think best art on a full art land is probably the Cup Island from Zendikar.
You called me basic? Are you kidding me?
Hey man,
That's
man.
actually
But
that is the
Are you
staple
kidding me, man?
I
on
will
the island
I will
staple
say-
tier list.
I will say though that probably my favorite cycle overall. I was saying that just in terms of art, but in just overall cycle, it's got to be Unhinged. Just like the super stripped
Which
down
one is the
border.
unhinged ones.
There's
so many on
just
ones,
like
dude.
the square full
Yeah.
art.
Okay.
Like this
kind of-
just
they are
the
iconic.
they've been reprinted a bunch. Like they redid them for Devil Masters, but Devil Masters have like the full border
Okay.
where
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Unhinged has like a very awesome like just clean square border.
So
on all of
now that
them.
you mentioned that, I will say this was my secondary pick was actually Double Masters specifically, because the Double Masters it's my pick for the cheapest, most cost effective way to like have a blinged out mana base, right?
Right.
Because it used to be Zendikar lands as the cheapest full art basics, and I mean I think they still are the cheapest, or like the BFZ ones.
Yeah, they're
but
like
they're the cheapest.
25 cents.
It's just
compared
not
to
nearly as pimped to have
$2
BFZ
for
lands as it
Double
is to
Masters.
have like Double Masters unhinged lands. Like those ones, they look really nice.
Dude, I feel like reprinted land art is just disqualifies automatically.
It's also, if you actually look at the arts between the differences between the original Unhinged art and the Double Masters art, it's actually like super washed out in the Double Masters art.
Oh really? I thought they were quite vibrant.
Intentionally.
If you compare it to Unhinged is like just more saturated.
Gotta save on those pennies.
Yeah, right.
Morgan, what about you?
I'm gonna go with the Amonkhet ones. I'm a sucker for a good sunset.
Those weren't the one. It was Hour that had the bolus horns, right?
They both had the bolus horns. They were like
yeah.
more prominent in the Hour ones.
Okay, because I hated the bolus lands. I thought they looked so ugly.
Fight.
Let me see. I'm looking up Amonkhet full art lands. Full art basic. Let's see. Oh, there's some. They're all right. They're all right. But these, to me, these are BFZ tier. You know, they're like you could. I remember looking at the planes, the full art planes, because it was the cheapest foil full art planes for a pauper deck I wanted to foil out.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's not bad.
I think I could probably name my favorite basic land card of all time too, but
number
let's keep it.
247 island.
It's not an island.
Oh really? What is it?
It's not Penn Island.
It's not an island. It's a swamp. But I'll keep it secret.
On next
Maybe
episode
eventually
of
yeah.
Dragon Ball Z, Matt reveals his favorite basic land.
He keeps
Okay.
giving hints.
So that brings us to listener questions. What is the best standalone color in CDH? Taking into account commander strength and diversity, strength and diversity, and strength of the 99. What is this? What is... Oh, strategy strength, sorry.
Strategy strength.
Strength and diversity, strategy strength and diversity, and the strength of the 99. There's too many strengths. It was messing me
I
up.
resent the fact that it's
And this
color.
comes to us from Cappy Taliste. Thank you for writing in. So yeah, what is the best standalone color in CDH?
So in terms of strength, it just has to be blue, right? Because Urza is just like
it's the best mono.
It's so focused and so busted.
What does standalone mean though? Doesn't standalone mean like without the commander consideration?
No. It's taking into account commander, strategy, and like actual just strength of 99. So
standalone means it's not when paired with something.
Yeah. But the thing with blue is that Urza is absolutely busted. The 99 is far more focused than any monocolored deck has any right to be. But it also has like zero diversity. Every single mono blue deck looks the exact same.
Except for Orvar.
No, they're all shades of the same. They run it's the Orvar slots. They all have their deck, dependent or commander dependent synergy slots, but it is the same thing. It's like ramp, counter spells, card advantage combo, And they're all very similar pack.
So I guess so if blue is like the absolute best in terms of strength, what's the absolute best in terms of diversity? Is it just red? Just because red's card quality is so low that it needs to play commander specific.
The thing is, it depends on. You need to be very generous with where you put the threshold for CDH viability.
That's true, because you can start going down to like Zeta very quickly and just.
Well, Zeta is good as far as mono red commanders go. So for reference, on the Red Love, red, the mono red CDH Discord, we've got Godo, mono red partners, Bergie, Duretti, Delina, I don't even know what that is, Vitali, Feldon, Krenzo, Hitotsugu, Ilharg, Kikijiki, Krenko, Magda, Morag, Muxus, Neheb, Norin, Perforos, Rionia, Slowbad, Squee, Circara, Torbrin, Varchild, Zada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of those have dedicated channels. Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't say that red is the best in terms of commander strength and diversity. Like, I think if you're optimizing on both of those factors, it's definitely
So
not.
what I'm saying is we locked in optimizing for strength only, which is just like it just has to be Urza and Mono Blue in general. If we optimize for diversity only, what is it? I think it I was saying like
probably
I think it might
red,
be red,
but I think
it might
blue
actually
has the best depth.
I think
like in terms of how big, how much area is under the curve. You know, it's like blue
is the thing. They're not like fundamentally different. Where like a lot of the red decks are pretty fundamentally different.
I think it might actually be black for diversity, because the tool set that black has, while like if you're only optimizing for strength, all the black decks are just like super aggressive all in combo. Like black has a bunch of, you know, like bad things that you can do that are like stacksy, or like, you know, I'm thinking of like Turgrid or like Tiny Bones or things like that, where like you have these, you know, extremely varied strategies, and not only that, but you also, like, black gives you the access to whatever cards you need to like make whatever strategy you're playing actually be executed.
Actually be consistent. Yeah.
I don't know. Doesn't that kind of go against diversity? Why?
No, but like I'm saying, across however many mono black decks, like Demonic Tutor can find however many different cards you want. That like, so
Blue
yes,
has the same thing though. Now, realistically, like most of the combos, it finds artifacts and it can find wizards. It finds Mystic Sanctuary and it can find spells.
Yeah,
like
that's
blue also finds everything.
Yeah, but what Morgan's getting at is like, as you said, like you find Mystic Sanctuary to find your stuff, but like the stuff that you're doing at the end of the tutor chain is the same for all the blue decks, whereas for black, like the end state of the chain is different for pretty much every deck, but you just have the tutors to always
not mostly all Nas decks.
Well, that's what we're just walking.
Were you just not listening?
This is the exact chain of thought that we just walked through.
Okay, red does not have the tutor density,
You said stuff about Turgid,
has
but I was like,
has at least the win con diversity that black has. Like red's, I think, way above black.
So like what I'm saying is that like black, again, if you're allowing some not great decks, like a bunch of the ones we talked about in the context of mono red, I think that black actually runs a very wide range of options in terms of how many, like, what different strategies it can let you play. From like, yes, I don't think that the like hard stacks resource denial type black decks are actually good, but I think they're at least as good as freaking Zerillion of the Claw, and like,
how dare you? How fucking dare you?
And like between the various mono black decks, there is actually there is actually a decent deal of strategy diversity, where like almost all of the mono blue decks are playing a bunch of counter spells and card advantage, and then like, you know, whatever win con your commander enables, and like I guess that's
so
what I'd say about that.
The final question there then is, if you are optimizing for both, what's the best like cross between them? I think black loses out on power too much.
Yeah, the black's actually good card pool is a little bit shallow.
Yeah, sort of, and like it doesn't have like a commander on the same level as a lot of the other.
Thing is, Urza is the best of all monocolored commanders, but then also when you just start looking at like the like depth, like how does the 7th best mono blue commander compare to, you know, every other green, red, whatever? I think blue is the deepest for sure.
Yeah, I think there's also like, not that it's as as good because it's definitely not. But we haven't really mentioned green, and there's definitely like green has a very large set of cards that work together in like a commander agnostic way. I think arguably
that's sort of like
you could make the case that if you had to play a deck without a commander, you'd actually rather
like
play a
Prismatic
mono green.
Piper as your commander.
Yeah.
I'd still go blue, I think.
I mean,
I
No,
think
for
green is.
sure go green.
I think
No,
green's
I think
just
blue.
better.
I think that the turn spell combo is just better than the
because
No.
green. No, but the fact that like green gives you so many tutors for the thing that it wants to be doing, and then you also just like have
a lot of
relatively
tutors for what
good
you want to
card
be doing.
quality.
You have so
Not
many.
to the same degree in blue. No.
I think you actually because you get 5 tutors at base for the land for sanctuary, you can run tons of redundant copies of turn spells, and then you also have access to wizard cycling for. You could run up to Floodbringer, Oboro, which are wizard cyclable, trade routes, and the stupid rogue one. Whatever. There's more bounce creatures. I mean, you can go beyond that. But there's a lot of redundancy, and they're all pretty findable. I think you actually do edge out green.
No way.
No.
First off, green does everything,
Still
and then
not
all of its
convinced,
tutors are like green creatures alone can do everything, and then all of your tutors in green are for creatures. You're almost like it's hard to say you're better than black.
But how many creature tutors do you go? What's your depth?
Well, it's not even that's not even the point necessarily that Matt's making. It's the fact that like in blue you have all these individual tutors for all these individual effects that you need to link together to do the thing. Green, all of your tutors are for all of your things.
Yeah, you could start in the middle, start at the end.
Yeah, but if you need to run, I don't know, what would be the combo you'd go for? It's probably some Shia combo, right?
Yeah, it's just like whatever green-based dork thing that you're doing. Like some Teamer Sabertooth.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's probably a Shia, but there's also like Teamer Sabertooth stuff and just like random Korean Ranger Wirewood things, or just like ETB draw spells or whatever.
I'd probably start with Teamer Sabertooth. Yeah. I probably would
anyway
over a Shia.
Anyway, let's go through and cap this one off. It's getting long.
Yeah.
Lyndon, you said blue. Matt, you say green.
I'll stick with green, yeah.
I'd probably stick with green. I know we didn't give much love to white this episode. Sorry, Charles. Sorry, Michael. Morgan.
I think overall, like, because of commander strength, I am still going with blue.
All right. Got a good split there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard to argue the commander strength.
Yeah, well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoNorthPod, via our email, intonorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. Extra thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we're at patreon.com/IntoNorthPodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. So anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, use our affiliate link, which is in the podcast/YouTube description. A portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor, Manta Ray Matt. The next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then.
See ya.